Hi, everybody. It's time for Nature Connections with Minnie Kansman, a Star Nation's Be Live show brought to you through Facebook. I'm Minnie Kansman, your host, and today we're going to talk about water, the spirit of water, and all of the many facets that water has. Boy, did I have a fun time looking up topics for today. So many avenues I could go through. But first, I want to wish all of you a happy equinox or Maban. I know my show last month was all about preparing for that. So I hope you all had fun and some of you got to do some rituals or some ceremonies. I know I did yesterday morning at 7:31 in the morning in my garden, and it was a beautiful time. It was very peaceful and still. And I did the active power ceremony, but the very first thing I did was lighting the match at the exact time of the equinox, which was 7:31, and meditating 10 minutes before and feeling the energy, and then lighting the match and lighting the candle and just seeing if there felt a difference. And there was a difference. It was pretty cool. It was like I stepped into another space. The energy of the garden was very clear, almost like a space clearing had been done. And I felt very calm and grounded and centered. And it was a wonderful way to start my active power ceremony. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. It was really fun. And then last night, I got to do a forest therapy walk here around the lakes where I live. And it was a sunset nature immersion is what I called it. And we did it from 5 to 7. Sunset's around 7 here in Colorado right now. And it was perfect. And I always ask the nature spirits to help me out for things like that. And they came through. Man, we had the most beautiful sunset at the very end of our walk when I'm doing tea ceremony with group, and we're looking out over the lakes with the mountains behind. The air was clear. We could actually see the mountains. We haven't been able to see the mountains very much in the last few months because of the fires. So to be able to even see the outline of the mountains was pretty special. So I enjoyed that so much. It was so much fun. And so before we get going, I'd really ask you to, if you could share this with maybe some friends that you know that might be interested. You could do it on Messenger, or you could just share it on the Facebook page, on the whatever site you're watching from. I would really appreciate that, because I love to get this message of connecting with nature out to the world. So I'm going to use you as my to spread my voice out to the world. And let's see who's here in the chat room. Oh, Neshi's here. Of course she is. I love that she our shows back to back sometimes, and it's great today that happened. And so I was on her show for a little bit with the card draw, and then she can hop right over to the show. And Rochelle, hi Rochelle, it's good to see you, is here. And Jean, I know Bean Elaine means Jean Timlin, my friend, sweetie. That's so great to have you on here. And thanks for sharing, you guys. I really appreciate that so much. So, water, the spirit of water. Like I said, big topic. And I had fun narrowing it down. I am in astrology. I am of the Cancer sign, which is ruled by water. It's a water sign. And I'm also my rising sign in astrology, if you know what that is, and my moon sign are also Cancer, so also ruled by water. So you could say I'm a triple water. So water is my element. Water is about flow and movement for me, and the deep emotions that I feel, and the deep love that I love to share with people. So water helps facilitate that for me, but we'll talk about there's all kinds of ways that water comes of assistance to us in our lives, besides just being something that physically keeps us alive. So many spiritual elements to water. Water elementals. Those are the nature spirits that I talk to when I'm asking for it to rain in Colorado or Oregon or California, to rain on the wildfires. And I put out a call and did a drumming for the wildfires here in Colorado, the one nearest to me, the Cameron fire. And, like a week later, we had a foot of snowfall in the mountains, and that has helped tremendously, because right now the temperatures are a lot colder at night up there, and they've had even some more rain since the snow. Pictures I see of that fire are smoldering, not open flames shooting across the forest, but just smoldering, burning spots, hot spots that they're watching and making sure they don't flare up. The snow really helped, which is a water elemental, right? In the form of frozen snow, really helped the firefighters get closer to the fire, and then they're able to really fight on these hot spots, or they're doing more of the airdrops of the fire retardant on those spots because they can get closer to the fire now instead of the huge flames that were just roaring through before the snow came. So I'm just so grateful to those water elementals for coming in, and pray that they will help in Oregon and California too, and continue our prayers for those water elementals to help bring into balance what's happening with the fire elementals, right? That's a whole nother story, a whole nother show. Holly's here. Hi, Holly. She says, my mom, Mary Ellen, and I are here. Oh, thank you, Holly, for bringing mom along. It's good to meet you on the live stream. So, like I said, water not only cares for our physical needs. We know our body needs water to survive. Research will tell you our bodies are made up of 60 to 75, 80% water. And doing research for that, I found out that that percentage means that, like, if your body's 70% water, your physical weight, 70% of it is water, and the rest 30% is your physical matter in your body. Because we know water weighs a lot too. But isn't that amazing? We're kind of walking around as a container for water, if you think about it, in our physical bodies. And that's a lot of water. It really is. And so today we're going to talk about all the different ways that we can influence that water outside of us and inside of us. But water is also, it's also sacred. And the indigenous tribes around the world have known this for generations. And for some reason, some of us in our society have forgotten that piece, and it became, purchasing water rights and purchasing, bottled water, and it's become a commodity and a resource rather than a spiritual, sacred being. And today I want to talk a lot more about that sacred being that water is. Annie Ninjas, yay, from across the pond, over the sea, she says. I like to say she jumps across the pond. She lives in the UK, in England, and thanks for being on, Annie. I don't know what time it is there. It must be in the evening, I would think. So let's just dive into talking about the water elementals first. And for me, the water elementals, they're known as undines, Undines, undines. And they are like any elemental or nature spirit or fairy or such. They're going to show themselves to humans in a form that you might be most comfortable with. So sometimes undines have shown themselves to humans as like mermaids, right? Or physical beings in our physical bodies, but in the water. Even though they really are energy in the water, they may show themselves to humans as a physical being. And this artist, his name is René Lacue, I think he's French. I want to show you this picture because I found this picture of this bowl. He's an artist, this glass bowl that he made. And I think, actually, I'm going to give you the close up of this. To me, when undines have shown themselves, when water spirits have shown themselves to me in the water, this is what they look like. Almost a clear opalescent being, always female in energy for me. And water is on the yin side, so that makes sense. But we do have the mermen and the mermaids, so they have shown themselves as in the male form too. But this is what they look like to me. And one I remember explicitly was when I was in Kauai with one of my travel groups, and I was down watching the water by some large rocks, and I'm watching it flow kind of in the eddies and the crevices and coming in and out with the waves. And that's when a being such as this showed itself to me in the water. And I was asking, please show yourself to me. I'm ready to see you. And this is very similar to what I saw that day. So, like I said, they always also can show up. Do you see the little? I'm going to give this a solo. See the little mermaid? It kind of looks like a fish, doesn't it? We know, mermaids usually are shown larger, but to me, this is like a nature spirit in a mermaid, is how a nature spirit might decide to show its form to us. Like, am I a fish or am I a mermaid? You might be diving in the water and you might see that and you might question, your mind might go back from fish to mermaid, fish to mermaid. I'm not sure. So that's another way they might show themselves to you as a human. Interesting in our everyday society here, how one coffee company has chosen a merfolk or mermaid for their logo, for their symbol. And I did a little research on that. And when Starbucks company was just starting out, they were thinking of coffee and its connection to the ports because it started in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, I believe. And so they were looking through some old seafaring books and such. And this symbol, actually, this is the first symbol that they used for Starbucks of the mermaid, caught their eye. And so it was a very old symbol that they've used, and it's been very profitable for them, don't you think? And we see it every day on our coffee cups, right? So there's a water elemental for you. You're carrying around coffee in your cup, your water in your cup, with the elemental on the outside. Okay, so Annie says it's 9:10 p.m. in England right now. Okay, it's good to know. I love it. I love being international. So, you can't talk about water unless you bring up a really famous gentleman from Japan, Dr. Masaru Emoto. And his work with water has been life-changing for me. To have physical evidence of the influence that emotions and words and thoughts have on water is amazing. And then he showed us, because our mental minds need that physical proof. I mean, we energetically saw it. We saw things making a difference, such. but energetically showing us proof. And so what he did was he would take water from like a polluted stream or lake or even tap water, and he would freeze it. And this is showing the process of how he froze it and then put it under a microscope, a very, very strong microscope, to get these singular snowflake type ice crystals that he would take pictures of. And let me get back here, and maybe I'm jumping a little. So I want to show you what he would do with the water. So he would freeze it with that microscope that I showed you. It would form that mound of kind of snow, you know, that frozen piece. And on the very top of that mound would be a snowflake. And then they take a photograph of it through the microscope. And when he took water, like you see, the water before and after a Buddhist prayer on the very right of this picture. Let me get it a solo. Before, the water and pollution is very, when it freezes, it's very irregular. There's no pattern at all to it. It's like a glob. And then they pray over the water, and it changes to this beautiful geometric crystalline form. So the different words that he used in his experiments, he would take bottles of water, and he wouldn't even talk to them. He would just put the words "you fool" on the label and leave that for like a day, or he'd put the word wisdom on it. And he would do this experimental process with trying different words that were glued to the bottles or spoken to the water, but usually it's words that he used. And you saw a difference in the composition of the water, but especially the before and afters where it changed, I thought, I think is fascinating and amazing. Here's one of my favorites as well. Look at that. Look at the word thank you. And he found that some of the most beautiful crystals that would show up were for the words thank you, I love you, which you can see that next to angel, which I love angel because that looks just like a halo, doesn't it? But it was thank you, I love you, and I respect you. But look at truth, wisdom, beautiful. And, you know, polluted water before prayer, polluted water after prayer on the bottom right there. You make me sick and evil. How do those words affect the water? So water is like a messenger in these. Water holds that energy and shows us what it looks like. I think that's fascinating. So water has memory. One of the experiments that Dr. Emoto did that I was reading about that I thought was just fascinating and quite a big leap of faith for him was he was doing a lecture at a conference in Israel, and he's from Tokyo, Japan. Okay. But before he left Tokyo, he left a bottle of water on his desk that was just tap water from the office building. And he went to the conference in Israel, and he had slides that showed the outside of his office building, entering into his office, like outside the door. And then he had another slide that showed the group, the picture of the water sitting on his desk. And he asked everyone in the conference, this was at the very beginning of his talk, to say the words to the water, I love you, I thank you, and I respect you. And they said that just 3 times to the photograph that he had up on the screen of the water. And then he had them meditate for 1 minute on that water being pristine, clear, clean, beautiful water. And then he had one of his assistants that was in his office take that water and start to begin the experiment with it, where he freezes the water. And it took like 3 hours. And what his lecture was, it took like 2 or 3 hours. And that was as long as his lecture was there at that conference or his workshop, whatever. And at the end of the workshop, he had his assistant send the photograph of whatever it was, whatever showed up in the microscope, to the group. And he said he was just holding his breath because he didn't know it, maybe it wasn't going to work. And it was the most beautiful crystal. And the group just stood up and gave him a standing ovation. It was amazing. And he said, see how you can affect water, even long distance. So for me, this idea that if we can prove this long distance, this proves for me a lot of other things, like long distance healing, long distance space clearing, long distance prayer. It does make a difference. And the water is showing us physical proof that it does. And so for me, Dr. Emoto's work has been life-changing to see the physical evidence of that. And Jean in the chat room says, I'll put it on here. And if we're 70% water, how we talk and resonate with our loved ones is a huge deal. Oh, Jean, yes. So important. And what's even more important is how we talk to ourselves. Our bodies are listening. Remember all that water, we're walking around being a big container of water. Our bodies are listening. So words can hurt you. Yes, they can. You saw that crystal of you fool. Words can hurt. So the attitude is the most important. Okay, I can't remember how to take that off. There we go. Okay. So kudos to Dr. Emoto for giving us that visual, physical evidence that water is affected by what we think and what we do. He does a lot of work with groups of, with polluted water and changing that water. Unfortunately, Dr. Emoto died in 2016, but he still has his company, his researchers, and his wife, who is in charge of publishing his books. He has 10 books now, and his most famous and his very first book was The Hidden Messages in Water, and I highly recommend you looking that up. I'm going to put it in the chat link. And that up. I'm sure you can get it at the library now even. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And you go online and you'll see lots of images of his before and afters. And for your extra reading, I have written an article for next month's Star Nations magazine in November, all about Spirit of Water. And there's a link in my article about Dr. Emoto's work, and it shows many, many before and after photographs. And I just love researching and looking at his work. Beautiful. And Jean says, my inner talk really needs to improve. Yes, all of us really can be reminded what a difference the inner talk makes to our bodies. So, something else. So, like I told you, the prayer that Dr. Emoto found was the most effective with water for changing the crystals. So for doing water blessings near your home or with a lake or body of water that you know, the words are, I love you, I thank you, and I respect you. I love you, I thank you, and I respect you. He also did research with groups because he wondered if it made a difference if the group held hands and said the words, or if they did prayer mode and said the words. And so he took photos of both, and that's in his book, Heal Love Thyself. That's the name of the book that I have, that I got that information out of. He found that actually prayer mode brought the brightest, most beautiful crystals forward. That holding hands and saying the prayer, they got beautiful crystals. But doing prayer mode was even more powerful. And he asked the different participants what they thought about that. And they said, well, I'm not really combining my energy with somebody else's. I'm just being pure me, but I'm in the circle with everyone's pure me. And so I think that's interesting. That makes a difference. And so actually, Rain and I at dinner lately, we always say prayer and we usually hold hands. And I said, let's just try prayer mode and see if that feels different. And for me, I'm much more centered and much more taking in the words of what I say when I'm in this prayer mode. And it's a matter of energy connection with our body. I don't know that it's really connected to any religion. I think the religions, way back figured out there was an energy connection in our body. So you might want to just play around with that yourself, try that out. So let's go to the applying water to our self-care, to our physical bodies. And how many of you like to, I love this. Holly's sharing something. I'm going to put this up here. My acupuncturist told me to sit next to a river while eating watermelon to assist the water in my body to move through the kidneys. Fascinating. Well, yeah, you've got inner and outer support going on there, Holly, at the same time. And, that's a beautiful segue into where I'm going next with the physical water assisting us on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. So how many of you like to take tub baths? Me. This is my favorite. As a triple Cancer, I think this is my favorite way to unwind, de-stress, and re-energize myself is to take a bath or a swim. I love to just be my whole body in water and to relax and, like I said, to energize myself. How many of you, if anybody, been in a deprivation chamber where you're just in water? It's kind of the one I was in was kind of like a hot tub. It had a higher dome on it. It wasn't so low, but it had a lid on it. They shut the lid and you were in there in the warm water, and it was a saline water. So you could float very easily in it. And there was no sound and no light. And I was in there with like 2 other people, so I wasn't completely alone, but we were very quiet. We didn't talk at all. And I love it. But I love being in caves and they turn off all the lights and everything too. But I loved floating in the water, being in that just with the element of water. It's an amazing experience. And they found that can be very healing for people. But there's, hydrotherapy, any kind of water. In sports medicine, they use hydrotherapy all the time. It helps get the chi moving in the body, helps get the water flow and movement going on in circulation. So it's good for arthritis. It's good for fibromyalgia. I was reading definitely this hydrotherapy and the idea of being in water, being immersed in water. I take the opportunity when I'm in the bath to do meditations, to do releasing. I love to go all the way under, or at least get my ears under. But going all the way under really helps me, especially if I'm releasing emotions or whatever from the day. So give yourself a bath. You could do showers too. You can wash away lots with a shower, with that flowing water. Holly brought up the idea of the waterfall, and we know that waterfalls release the negative ions that are very beneficial for our physical bodies. So giving yourself the gift of um, walking to a waterfall or being near a very babbling brook. And for me, this part of it is the sound of it as well. But just putting your feet in and moving water. And here in Colorado, there's so many wonderful opportunities for that. And even taking cold showers. I was reading that cold showers are actually very stimulating and good for our physical bodies if you can stand it. Um, they really get our bodies moving. I think it's the shock of the cold, and then your body warming everything back up again that gets the movement going. So I love this picture. I'm going to give it a solo. You know, those ripples, the influence that water can have in our lives. And for me, this is about when we bless the water and we create that rippling blessing outward to the whole lake, or even when we bless the water and it moves through rivers, it moves through streams, it moves through condensation into the clouds, it goes everywhere. Water everywhere. So I love that movement of water in our lives, and just showing up everywhere. So another thing I read about with the self-care with water is, even swimming and combining, like you think about it maybe in your bathtub with meditation or affirmations, but swimming, you can bring in positive affirmations while you're swimming. So while you're doing the physical act, do some spiritual work as well. Affirming, my body's getting stronger and more agile every day, or every stroke that I take in this water is making my body healthier. Thinking about that, whether you're in a lake or even in a swimming pool. But there's affirmations that you can do while you're doing that physical work as well. And you know how many water rituals, if we talk about religions, how many water rituals, water for purification ceremonies they are. This is, I love this picture. I'm going to give it a solo. Here's a little baby getting baptized. So in the Christian religion, we baptize children, and then also some religions baptize adults as well in physical streams and lakes, or in tanks at the synagogue or church. But here's baby getting baptized, and the Christians believe that in purification and cleansing the soul of the child, and then they do it again when they're older and are conscious of that act. Is anybody out there? Oh, hi, Pat McDonald. She's here watching, she says. Yay. Anybody watch the show Raimi on TV? It's a show about a Muslim gentleman. Oh, darn. I hate it when I click a picture and I make it disappear instead of stay on the screen. Whoops. So I'll just talk. The gentleman was washing his face in water in the photo. And they call this in the Muslim faith ablution. And in this show, in Raimi, they're doing this all the time, because you do it before you go to pray. Before you enter a synagogue, you would do this, and they have that all set up before you enter the church. The men have a place, it's part of it's like a restroom, but it's the ablution room, and the women have one. And what you do is they wash their hands all the way to the elbows, and they wash their face and their neck behind their head, and then they take their shoes and socks off, and they wash their feet up to their knees. And they do, some even wash their mouth out too. But they have, a whole system set up where they can sit on these stools and do this very easily. And it's their purification ceremony before they go pray. And now, I'm not Muslim, but I have to try it and see how it feels, right? So I did this the other day, just like during the middle of the day, just to see what energetically, how I felt. And it was wonderful. Oh my goodness. So I felt so refreshed and energized. Like it was a really nice pick-me-up, but I could see how you would want to go into a synagogue very clean and fresh like that, rather than the way I felt before I washed. So I can see how it can make a big difference. And it's a big part of their beliefs and their purification. Now there's another religion, the Shinto or Buddhism religions in Japan have these washing stations right outside the temples before you even go in. And they have these ladles, and there's a whole ritual that they do. And you see the words say, pour some of the water into your left hand. So you grab the ladle with your right hand, and you pour water over your left hand. And then you put the ladle in your left hand, pour water over your right hand, and then you put it back in your right hand, pour it over your left, and then you can put some in your mouth if you want. But there's this, specific way of doing this cleansing, and they all do it before they enter the shrines. When my son Stefan and his wife Jillian were in Japan, they were going to all these Shinto shrines. That's hard to say. Shinto shrines. And Jillian learned how to do this ritual, so they would be doing it correctly in front of the native people. Something else, on a side note, not about water, but if you're ever approaching one of these shrines after you've done this water ritual, you walk in. There's a entrance way outside the temple, a walkway to get in. You always want to walk on the outer edges of that, never in the center, because the center is the space they allow for the deities to enter and exit. So you don't want to be the stupid American walking in the middle with the deities. So just so you know, walk on the sides. That's why there's nobody walking in the middle. That could be a show in itself, I think. It'd be pretty interesting. So I want to talk about water blessing ceremonies now. Every time that I do a forest therapy walk, I include a water blessing ceremony, because Dr. Emoto's work and how powerful I saw the difference in paying attention and respecting water. I do this blessing, and sometimes, most oftentimes, I do it with a group, and we go down to the water and we hold our hands over the water and we say Dr. Emoto's, words. Water, I love you. Water, I thank you. Water, I respect you. Just saying that 3 times, it's very powerful. Something else, which I'm jumping back to self-care because I forgot, but Dr. Emoto said it's important for you to say that prayer to yourself as well. That, because we're 70% water, right? And I think this is interesting, because it's harder to say it to myself than it is to say it to a body of water. But to say, Minnie, I love you. Minnie, I thank you. Minnie, I respect you. It's really, really powerful. So put your name in there and do that 3 times. Wow. Yeah. And for me, the respect part at the end is like, whoa. How often do you say those words to yourself? Not often, I bet. I love you, I thank you, and I respect you. So saying that over the water is very powerful. Um, like I said, I do this in my forest therapy walks. I did it last night at my walk on my own. I had my drum and I had the group out doing something else. And I was just sitting there with the water, and I sang a water blessing song, which is another way that you can bless the water. And lots of Native American tribes have water blessing songs. I think the majority of their blessing songs are about blessing water because they know how important it is for our life and for our spiritual being. So there's a beautiful water song I love called the Elgin Water Song. I'm going to see if I can put it up. I put it, the Water Blessing Song. Put it up. And I'm going to put it in the chat room too. If you Google this on YouTube, you will get the most gorgeous YouTube video, and I will put that in the comments at the end too. You will get the most gorgeous YouTube video of these women talking about blessing water and singing this song. And I wanted to sing a little bit of it for you. I've never sang online before on my show, but I was told this was important to sing to you. And if you want to learn this song, I would just recommend just watching this YouTube video and singing it over and over again until you learn the words, because they really are beautiful. And she talked about the water at the beginning of the video. She says, the water has memory, and the water is listening. It's listening to your prayer. So it goes like this. Nibi Navo and Diane, Aki Miskwi, Nibi Wabo, Heya, 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 hey, heya, 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 ho. Nibi Wabo and Diane, Aki Miskwi, Nibi Wabo, heya, 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 hey, heya, 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 ho. So in the video, she talks about, especially the women singing this song, and singing it 4 times, once to each direction. So you would face those directions, singing it, blessing the water, and it's a beautiful song. I love that Holly says she has sung this song at an event in Traverse City. Oh, I wonder. Oh, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's not a real, this one's not a real old song. It was written, I wish I had the author, written, maybe 15, 20 years ago, the most. Not old, but beautiful. But lots of the chants that I do with the drumming, the one I did last night, are older Native American songs specifically made for blessing the water. So, ideas for blessings. There's other countries that bless the water. I love this picture. I got to give it a solo too because it's so gorgeous. So lots of countries in Bali and South Africa, they actually have water festivals, and they dress up like water spirits and have parades. I love this so much. These beings, their costumes were incredible. This, I think, was in Germany. Actually, you can see by the buildings, it looks like Germany. But different countries having these water parades and water festivals. But especially in South Africa, they talked about, the water spirits are so essential for their well-being, for their prosperity, for their crop production. In Bali, when I was there, we were in a temple and there were all these miniature boats on this table, and I was like, what is this about? And there were names in the boats, and it's like every family would sponsor a boat, and they would say a prayer to the water spirits for their family's abundance, for fishing and their safety while they were on the water. And so they were praying with the water spirits there for their livelihood. So this interaction with water and humans has been going on forever. And we need to remember and respect how important water is in our lives. I like these guys. And now I wanted to talk a bit about water and feng shui, just for a little bit. This is the kanji, or symbol, for feng shui in Mandarin Chinese. The top kanji is feng, and the bottom is shui, which means wind and water. So the first symbol, to me, I see a person in a house with the wind flowing over it. And then the second lower kanji, I see a splash of water. And this symbol shows you, actually, it's speaking about the ideal placement for your home in feng shui, where we would want to be like 3/4 of the way up the hillside or the mountain, 3/4 of the way up. We wouldn't want to be on the top because the wind would be too powerful. But if we're about 3/4 of the way up, the wind can be there, but move over us. And then we always want to have water in front of us, water below us, the stream, the lake, so that if it floods, right, it's not coming down the hill on us, right? So we're going to be a little bit of ways from that water, so we know where the flood line is, but we're going to have the water in front. And so a lot of times in feng shui, I am looking at making placements where we put a fountain or a pond or something of that sort in front of the house, because that's the best position for it. Also, because in feng shui, water speaks to the area of career and life's journey, life's path's journey is what we call it. And so you want to have that prosperity of career in front of the house, be able to come in that front door which we call the mouth of qi. So we want to have water in the front, but not, necessarily in a floodplain. You want to have it in a safe distance from the house. I'm learning that in Colorado, that anything with the flooding that can happen here with the rivers too. So in feng shui, the element of water, like I said, is career. The color for water is black. That's why I've worn my black today. You might think it would be the blues. Well, why isn't it blues? And that's what we think water color is, or maybe clear even, right? But I finally figured out why feng shui chose black for water. I was hiking in the mountains in Colorado, and I was looking into a very deep pond, and it was black. Very deep water is black. And I was feeling that going within, that very, very yin. We talked at the very beginning about water being yin and going within, and that black, just, you can go in deep into that color black. And then later, as working as a landscape designer, putting in a pond realizing that the more realistic pond is going to have the black liner in it rather than the blue liner. That looks like a swimming pool, right? Black liner gives us that look of a natural pond. So it came about, again for me, like, black water. That's it. So water in feng shui, like I said, is like your career's path, your career journey. But there's different water ways that water moves that are beneficial or maybe not so much in our lives. And my teacher, Professor Thomas Lin Yoon, used to talk about water. I just saw Nishi say something which I wanted to show. The Minnie Wakoni. Yes, water is life. And I meant to bring that up during the water blessing pieces. But Standing Rock, so important to bring our consciousness about the sacredness of water and spirit of water back into our, mundane world, I want to say. Boy, did we see the indigenous tribes gather together and know that how important that was. They showed us, didn't they? But thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Nishi, because I didn't want to forget that. So as we go into feng shui, there's two types of feng shui, two types of water that my teacher, Professor Lin, would talk about. And he'd say still water and active water. So still water would be, the pond, and then we would be the small amount of water. And then we could go to the lake. Let me see, I've got a beautiful, one of my favorite lakes. This is Mills Lake here in Colorado. Needs a solo. I was just there with rain about a month ago. So your other still water could be a lake. And then the next still water would be the ocean as still water. And still water is about your ability to meditate and your ability to do your inner work. And so in the Chinese 5-element system, water's the only one that's divided into two qualities. And usually there's a low middle ground, which is where you want to be, and then too high. Still water is the only one that you want it to be as high as you can. So you're always going for that large, still ocean feel in still water. But in moving water, you want to go, you've either got water that's not moving at all, like this little mud puddle here on the trail that I took, which is too low for your moving water. Or you can have too high water. The ad I used for this show, a little too much energy there. Ideally, you want to have a nice meandering flow of a stream. That's the type of energy you want for your moving water to be in feng shui. So I want to read a poem. And I want to show this. This poem was given to me during my feng shui training with a woman named Catherine Metz. And it doesn't have an author. I wish it did, because I would love to give them credit for this. But I love this. Let me give this a solo while I read this. I love this poem because it talks about flow, and that's what water is all about, is flowing and its movement. And so I talked about that middle ground of active water, not too much, not too little, just right. Kind of like the Three Bears, right? Okay, so this is called flow. Be as water is without friction. Flow around the edges of those within your path. Surround within your ever-moving depths those who come to rest there. Enfold them, while never for a moment hold on. Accept whatever distance others are moved within your flow. Be with them gently, as far as they allow your strength to take them, and fill with your own being the remaining space when they are left behind. When dropping down life's rapids, froth and bubble if you must, knowing that one of you, now many, will just as many times be one again. And when you have gone as far as you can go, quietly await your next beginning. So I love that poem of how water moves. Water breaks apart, water comes back together, it coalesces back together, it froths and bubbles, but it condenses and becomes tiny little particles, and then it come down and become the ocean, and it can all coalesce together. So water's amazing that way, don't you think? I just love to think about its flow and its movement and all that it can teach us about going around obstacles. Rather than trying to push through them, it just finds a different route. When water's going down a hill and it can't make it one way, it's going to go another way, and it always makes it. So I see that Rochelle says, my home of 22 years is on a river. It feels so peaceful and content. That's my dream, Rochelle, to live near a stream here in Colorado, so I can hear it out my bedroom window. That's my vision of my next home here. I love it when I go to Florida and we rent a house on the beach and I can hear those waves all night long. It's such a beautiful, calming sound. So water can heal us on so many levels, from the outer element of water to that inner, working with that inner element of water within your body. So do your prayers and meditations while you're floating in the water, or you're sitting by the waterfall, but also remember to connect with and pray with that water that's in you. All those water elementals are in your body too. And they're waiting to hear your prayers. They're waiting to hear, how do you want to program that energy inside your body, negative or positive? Which of those water crystals would you want to be creating in your body from Dr. Emoto's work? So I'm just going to wrap it up with, let's see what's going on. I have been doing a lot of long distance feng shui lately. So if there's any of you Michigan or wherever that, you miss your feng shui consultant, I'm still here. I'm learning how to do them through Skype and doing long distance clearings, as space clearings as well. So ring me up if you want to do something. This is what we're doing during COVID, is doing these long distance pieces and Skyping and such anyways. So it's working. It's really working well. I have another sunset walk if you're here in Colorado, October 27th here at the High Plains Environmental Center. So please join me for that if you're listening and you're nearby. I'd love to have you. And my nature travel adventures, my trip to Scotland was postponed from, we had been there right now, just finishing up, was postponed to May. So May 17th through the 29th, I have 3 openings left. So if there's anyone out there thinking about it, still on the fence, I'd love to have you join me for that trip. It's going to be amazing. There will be water blessings that we will do at some of the sites we'll be at. We'll be at some beautiful waterfalls, and of course the ocean. We'll be on a lot of boats going from the islands. So there'll be lots of opportunity to speak with water there. So, I really love doing this show. I appreciate all of you that were here with me in the chat room listening right now, and those of you that will be listening to the archives. I really appreciate that, that you're listening and you're paying attention, because this is what I love to do. I love to share my nature connections with all of you. And so I'm going to say, until next time, may you be filled with the blessings of nature. Goodbye, everybody.